Hi, Caleb from Brownells here, and in today's video we're going to be going into detail on how to properly clean and maintain your AR-15. So what we'll do in this particular video is kind of talk about how to just do a quick field cleaning and then also go into a detailed maintenance. So we'll do like a detailed cleaning, and then we'll also talk about when to replace springs and stuff like that. So like your buffer spring, extractor, spring, and tensioner, that different stuff. So we'll get into more of that stuff kind of towards the end of the video, even though I'll talk about it, during the process. I'll reiterate at the end. So if you're just here to, figure out when you should replace the springs on your AR-15, just go ahead and just skip on over to the end. But if you want to know about cleaning, let's just go ahead and get started and jump right into it. Now, I will say this, in this video, I'm going to be using some specialty tools, and they are completely optional. They just make everything a lot easier. The only tool that makes things a lot easier that I'm actually not going to use in this video is going to be a ultrasonic cleaner. So ultrasonic tank is something that will greatly speed up this process. And it's definitely worth investing in because you can clean your AR-15 parts in it. You can clean handgun stuff. You can do suppressors, so it's definitely worth having. And they're more affordable now than they've ever been. But AR-15 cleaning, no ultrasonic tank. Let's jump right into it. Obviously, step one is going to make sure that your firearm is, of course, unloaded. All right, visibly check your chamber. And then now we can just start with the field strip. And I will also note this is obviously a SBR here, but this process is the same regardless of what your setup is. All right. So for the basic field strip, we'll just pop our takedown pin here. That's the one in the back. And then the pivot pin, which is the one in the front. We'll just pop those, separate the upper receiver from the lower receiver, and then pull back on our charging handle to remove our bolt carrier group and, of course, the charging handle. Now, if you were just doing a basic cleaning, this is pretty much as far as you need to take it apart. That's it. There's not much more you really need to take down. The only other thing you may or may not want to take out is going to be the buffer and the spring. And the buffer and the spring are, this component right here. In order to take them out, you're just going to depress your buffer retainer, which is that pin that's sticking up there. Let me get a tool I can kind of point with here. So this pin sticking up right here in front of this big piece here, which is the buffer, you're just going to want to, you can do it by hand. I like to use a tool. We're just going to push that down, keep our thumb on it, and the spring will come out. All right. So we are using what's called an A5 length buffer. So we have A5 length buffer, also the same length as the BCM Mark II. So if you have the BCM Mark II buffer system, those parts are completely interchangeable. And with that, what is different about it is that the length of this buffer is kind of somewhere in the middle between a rifle length and carbine length buffer. So this is our buffer. You don't really need to know about any of the buffer lengths. They all clean up the exact same. So we have our buffer here. As you can see, it looks a little chalky. That's because I use a dry lube to lubricate all this stuff in the back of here, and we'll get to that later. But to take it out, you just literally pull it out, separate it from the spring, and you can set that aside. And then, of course, we have the spring. This spring right here may look a little different than what you're used to. This is a Geisley Super 42 spring in a rifle length, because the A5 length uses rifle length springs. So we'll set that aside as well. Okay, now that is as far as you should ever go for just any kind of basic field strip. That's it. Now we can start, as far as the main components go, now we can start taking these components and breaking them down into their subcategories, right? So your bolt carrier group, we field stripped the AR, now let's field strip the bolt carrier group as well. All right. So now we're getting into the subcomponents here. All right, so to disassemble the bolt carrier group, what we're going to need to do is first remove our firing pin retaining pin. And I'll just get a tool out here for that. The tool I'm using, this is the breach tool. It is I say it's a Brownells product. It's exclusive to Brownells in the United States. But that's what I'm using here. I'm going to be using this quite a bit throughout this process. So to disassemble the bolt carrier group, you just take out this cotter pin here. Just grab something to pull on it with. Pull it out. And I'm just going to use a parts bin here to keep track of everything. Once that pin's out, there's now nothing holding in your firing pin. So to get your firing pin out, just simply turn your bolt carrier group vertical and just give it a little bit of a tap on a hard surface here. And if it's dirty like this one, it'll take a little bit, but it'll fall right out. Alright, so now we can remove the cam pin. So the firing pin was holding in our cam pin. So rotate it 90 degrees and then just lift straight up. And then the cam pin was holding in the bolt. Now you can separate the bolt from the carrier. Alright, so that is the field strip for all major and subcomponents. So everything's completely field stripped 100% now. Alright, so the bolt carrier and then the bolt carrier group. So at this point, you can just wipe down your bolt carrier group and scrape carbon off and stuff like that. But I'm going to go a step further. And as I mentioned, this is also going to be a detailed strip guide. So what I'm going to need to do is also remove the extractor. So to remove the extractor, let me just grab a pin kit here. This is just a basic stare-it punch set. And the extractor pin, you won't need a hammer for that. You literally just need to push down on it. So push down on the extractor and the pin will come out from either direction. You can see it coming out right there. And I'm just going to reach up and pull it out. It's not in there very tight because whenever the bolt is inside the bolt carrier, there's nowhere for that pin to go. And then your extractor will lift right up. Alright. So, your extractors, and this is pretty interesting here, so your extractors are made up of multiple subcomponents as well. You have this like donut looking thing around the side. And then you have, or what you should have, is an insert inside of that spring. And this one's actually missing that, so we're going to need to put one in there. So you have this donut, the spring, and then there should also be a spring insert, which, like I said, is missing. So we'll replace that. All right, so we'll put these components inside of the bin here. And then you also have your gas rings on the back of the bolt themselves, which are these 3 rings that sit on the back here. Those we're not going to remove. The only time you remove those is when you're going to replace them. And we're not going to replace these just yet. I'll show you how to check and see if they're worn or not. And we'll do that once the bolt carrier group is clean. Because with this check, you always want to do it with a clean bolt carrier group. Alright, so we'll set that aside as well. And just go ahead and get ahead of things here and grab a rag. Okay. Also, just for a basic cleaning, what you're going to want to do is you can leave your trigger and your hammer installed and just clean this up to the best you can with Q-tips and stuff like that. For our detailed clean, we're actually going to pull our hammer and trigger out of there. So we're not going to do that right now. We'll get to the detailed clean stuff later. The only thing I'm removing now for the detailed clean is that extractor. Okay. Now, where you go next is kind of really just completely up to you. What I'm actually going to do is go ahead, and since we have our upper receiver ready to go here, what I'll do is go ahead and clean the barrel, and I'll go ahead and also clean the chamber. And if you notice, this muzzle device is looking pretty crispy. So this thing here is going to need to be cleaned up as well. This is one that we put a suppressor over quite a bit. So that's why it looks the way it does. So if you have any kind of like muzzle device that mounts a suppressor over it, you want to make sure you're cleaning that up. It doesn't have to be spotless, just knock a good bit of the junk off of it so that your suppressor mount can continue. Your suppressor can continue to mount without getting stuck on there. So with the upper receiver, I'm actually just going to go ahead and spray out a lot of or clean up a lot of the upper receiver itself before I do the barrel. You can do it in whatever order, it doesn't really matter. So we'll do it this way here. But what I like to do is get the majority of the carbon buildup and fouling and stuff that's in there. Just get what I can with a rag to start off. And then we'll actually spray some stuff down in there in just a bit, but just kind of wipe out what you can see here. Alright, so once you have all the like really easy to reach stuff, now you can really kind of get in here. And what I like to do, I use this stuff, I do this for pretty much like every gun I clean. I just have some Hoppe's number 9 in a small dish, and I use these acid brushes. And I'm losing a bristle there. Okay. So the acid brush, I'll just dip in some Hoppe's number 9. And you can use whatever your favorite cleaner is. It doesn't have to be Hoppe's number 9. We're going to be using some other stuff when we get to the bolt carrier group, for example. But what I'll do is I'll just kind of tilt it at an angle here, so everything is going to just kind of run out the back as I go. And I'll take my acid brush and just kind of use it as a paintbrush, really, and just kind of scrub everything that's in there. And the acid brush is there to kind of help loosen up anything that's stuck to the receiver, and it does a pretty good job at that. And it's important to remember, like, especially, regardless of what kind of cleaning you're doing, especially if it's just like some basic field strip type cleaning stuff, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to remove everything from this gun. You just want to get the majority of the stuff out so that your gun keeps running well and functioning well. Alright. Now the only time I'm really concerned with getting out almost everything is if I'm doing a detailed strip clean, and I'm doing that like when I was working in the gunsmith shop, doing that for a customer. Then I would really get as much as I can out of there. And to be fair, I was also using an ultrasonic tank, so it was a lot easier to get a lot of that stuff out. And I'm also getting a little bit into that chamber area, so like that star chamber, like locking lug area. I'm going to get some in there because I'm going to clean it out in a bit, and I'll kind of show you how I go about doing that after I clean the barrel. And also, on another side note here, if you have like an air chuck hooked up to an air compressor, you can just blow everything out. That makes it way easier than trying to wipe everything out. But we do not have one hooked up here, so I'm just going to be doing it the hard way. Not the hard way, but the little bit more time-consuming way. And feel free to use, cotton swabs, whatever, anything like that. That'll just get down in there and just make your life a little bit easier. And I like to kind of just stuff the rag in there. And as you can see, we got almost everything except for that length along the top there, kind of where our charging handle rides. And we want to clean that up the best we can too. So what you can actually do is just take a cleaning patch or two, and you can kind of just stick them to the end of your brush like this. And what I'll do is that I will just kind of take my patch and brush, and I'm really just using the brush to manipulate the cleaning patch. And you can also kind of push it up underneath that gas tube right there. Because underneath that gas tube, especially towards the front of the receiver, tends to get pretty gross. Just because most people can't reach it when they're cleaning. Alright, and that is looking pretty good. And you can repeat that if needed. So if you just, like, how do you know if you need to repeat it? Just look in there and see if you missed anything major, and then repeat if needed. Okay, so that's the receiver itself. Let's do the barrel. And I'll just put it this way. I was trying to think of the best way for like me to be able to do this and you to be able to see it. So I'm going to angle the entire thing, the barrel, down towards the floor a bit. So if you have like nice carpet or whatever, you're doing this in the kitchen or I don't know, wherever you're doing it, just put something down to catch anything that'll drip out the barrel. Alright, so I'm going to be using a Dewey coated rod. I'm using one that is way too long for this, but that's okay. And what I'm going to be using is just some basic cleaning tools here. So I have a brass bristled brush. And then I have a brass jag. Alright, so with that brass brush, what I'm actually going to use is, where's my stuff here? This is KG copper solvent. It's made specifically for getting copper out of your barrel, and it does a really good job at it. And I'm just putting some on this brush here. And don't worry about the receiver because we are going to clean it again, because the only thing we have in there right now is that solvent. So I'm going to show you what I do after this process here too. And they also make different guides, like bore guides. They have one that you put into your AR-15 receiver so that you don't drip anything into it. Now, if you want to use one of those, great. I don't. And I really don't use them for pretty much anything. This is the downside of using a rod that's too long for what you're doing, is you kind of gotta feed it in there. All right. And it's going to be hard to do the first time because it's probably pretty dirty and pretty dry in there, depending on how long it's been since you cleaned it. You just want to make sure that you are coming from the receiver end. Don't start at the muzzle end. The reason you don't want to start at the muzzle end is because your actual cleaning rod, the edge of it, can damage your crown on your barrel. And that can and pretty much will affect your accuracy. Alright, so run your brush through there. I'd say I'm doing an abbreviated version of barrel cleaning just for the purpose of this video. But run the brush back and forth at least maybe 10 times. And that should be good to get most everything kind of broken up and pushed out of there. I say pushed out of there, now we're actually going to really push it out of there. What I'm going to do, I don't want to use one of those patches. I'll use a smaller patch here. And right now, the bore is wet with the copper solvent that was on that brush. So I'm just going to run a dry patch through here. and you can see kind of how dirty everything was there. That's the first patch that came out. It's also important to remember whenever you're cleaning your barrel, don't try and get it perfectly clean, because you will be chasing that for a long time. You just want to get the bulk of it out. Because already you can even see, you know, that's patch number 1, that's patch number 2. Obviously a very big difference. But we'll run, let's say, a total of 5 patches through. That's number 3. And if for whatever reason you're not happy with how it looks, it's perfectly okay to run the brush back through it again. That's fine. If you think, man, this could be way cleaner, run the brush back. All right. And there's patch number 5. There are people out there that say, I just run a few patches through it. Some people run 10. Some people run 20. Some people are still running patches to this day, just trying to chase that perfect clean. But I know I said I was going to do 5 patches. I'm going to do 6 because this one I'm actually going to lubricate. And this in this bottle I think is just EWG, if I remember correctly, so just a basic gun oil. When it comes to gun oils and stuff like that, you can use whatever your favorite oil and cleaner is. And there's my wet patch. Okay, so I'm going to run one more patch, but I'm going to do that after I finish that chamber and receiver. So with the chamber, remember how I put a bunch of hoppies in there, kind of worked it around in the chamber, but I never took it back out or never cleaned it out? This is where we're going to clean that out. So I'm going to get some larger patches ready here. And I'm going to get my breach tool, which is specifically made for cleaning this area, which is great. And it has these interchangeable brushes. These brushes are disposable and they are sold separately, so you can buy more if you need to. But one breach tool comes with a bunch of brushes and you can clean the brushes too. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it in the chamber. And because the brush is angled, it allows me to get in there and clean. And let me see if there's a better way for me to show you this here. But I'm just breaking up a lot of that stuff that's down in there. And you can come in from the ejection port and get the top side. All right. And then I take a patch, wrap it over those bristles, and do the exact same thing. And I use the tool to kind of move that patch around. And I know you can't see this, but I'm literally doing exactly what I described. I'm just moving that patch around with the tool. Because if you can see it, chances are that means I can't see it. And then it wouldn't matter at that point, because I can't show you what I can't see. All right, here we go. And that obviously was pretty dirty in there. And like just visibly looking at it, it looks a lot cleaner. But I'm going to get it just a little bit further now. that is good enough. Okay, now you can also, I mean, if you have like gun scrubber or different kind of like powder blasters or whatever, you can spray that in there as well. That's fine. Just make sure anytime you use a degreaser, you want to follow that with something to rehydrate the metal. You don't want to leave that degreased, very dry metal, especially if you live in a moist environment, you know, whatever, humidity is going to eat your gun alive. So what I do at this point is I'm going to use some rim oil, just because I'm not necessarily even really using this as a lubricant. I'm using it to just kind of rehydrate the metal, if you will, whether it be the aluminum or the steel. So I'm going to spray just a little bit at that chamber area there, and very lightly inside the receiver. And just wipe down the outside here. And then I'm also going to wipe down the inside. I'm not going to leave it wet with this stuff in there, just because I don't like to have just too much oil in my gun dripping everywhere, especially when I shoot it and then just oil is flying everywhere, getting all over my iPro and everything. There is no need to run your firearm that wet. Alright, now that looks really good. Now I'm going to use a dry patch real quick here. Do that same thing I did before in that channel on the top where that charging handle rides. Just going to use the brush to push the cleaning patch. I'm actually going to use the brush to, there we go, get around that gas tube a little bit as well. And if your cleaning patch kind of bunched up like mine did there, just take another one and we'll go in a little further with it. And all I want to do is just make sure I get underneath the gas tube like it is right now. Much better. Okay. So that's done. Alright, I'm going to push one last dry patch through the barrel. Great. And now the upper receiver is pretty much almost done. All I'm going to do right now is clean off the outside. I won't use that. So KG also makes, they make that copper remover that I was using in here. And this bottle right here, as well as this bottle, these are just Brownells needle oiler bottles that you can get at Brownells, and put whatever, you know, chemicals you want in them. Now, I'm going to take not the copper remover, but the KG carbon remover. Have I opened this yet? I have, yes. I just sprayed it all over the table. Couldn't tell. Anyway, I'm going to put this on this muzzle device here. And using a brush, I'm going to scrub it. Now I'm not going to get all of it off without some kind of scraping and stuff like that, but I'm not really worried about getting it all off. Yeah, so if you wanted to scrape it and get, you know, even more of it off, that's perfectly fine. This breach tool has a carbon scraper on it. And to use it, you literally just do exactly what you think you would. You scrape with the tool. And you can see it's knocking off that carbon in pretty big flakes. But that's all you do. That's all the carbon on that side. It's a relatively quick process. And that side's clean now, and you can see it's doing a pretty good job. Like I said, you don't need to get all of it. You can actually even take some quadruple-aught steel wool and get after it with that as well. But that KG carbon remover actually does a really good job at lessening the amount of carbon that's stuck on things. And you could also use like this is a nylon bristle brush. You could use a copper or a steel brush as well. And that'll also help get off quite a bit of it. Alright, I still have some on there, but that's okay. I got it off around kind of like the mounting surface of the suppressor. So where the suppressor rides over the seals and stuff like that. There's none there. And that's what we're really concerned about. So that's good enough. Okay, that is it for the upper receiver minus the bolt carrier group and charging handle. So we'll set this aside for now. And I'll actually get my barrel cleaning stuff just kind of out of the way here. And then before I do this again, I'm going to remember to get a smaller cleaning rod for next time. Okay, so I'm going to go over what I do to kind of clean the lower receiver. But before I do that, I'm actually going to take these parts from the bolt carrier group here. And I'm going to take some of this carbon remover and I'm going to put them soaking. So this is just a standard like phosphate bolt carrier group. And I'm just going to spray this stuff on there. All those high carbon areas. Spray it down in there. And with the actual bolt itself, your main carbon buildup area is going to be on the tail, right around there. Right before and right after those gas rings. But I am going to just kind of sprinkle some all over the place. And then just put a little bit on my firing pin. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Alright, so for the lower receiver, two ways to do this. Alright, one way is going to be your more expedient field strip type way. The other way is going to be the detailed strip way. Okay, now I'm going to show you the more field expedient way, or the basic strip way. And then after we clean the bolt carrier group, I'm going to come back and show you the detail strip way, all right, before we kind of put this gun back together. So what we're going to do, we're going to rotate our selector from safe to fire. I'm going to put my thumb on the hammer and just kind of guide it up just like that. All right, and as you can see by my thumb, this lower receiver is pretty dirty. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a rag and I'm just going to wipe this off the best I can. Now what I don't want to do is take something like carbon remover or something like that and just start squirting it down in there, because I know I'm not going to be able to get it all out. Now if you want to use a CLP, something that cleans, lubricates, and preserves, then you can go ahead and put that in there. But since that carbon remover does not lubricate or preserve, it only cleans, I don't want that anywhere where I can't get it out. And I'm just cleaning the top and the sides of the hammer. Now is also a great time to use some cotton swabs and get them down in there. I'm sure I have a few left here. So I like the long bamboo handled ones, especially for this. But you're just gonna clean up. I'll get that pin out the way to clean underneath it. But just get in there. Get as much as you can out. So looking at this, what you want to do is when you look in there, you're looking for any excessive buildup or anything like that under and around that trigger area. This doesn't have any of that. It's just a little dirty. So honestly, I could take this and be perfectly okay with just doing a field strip cleaning, but we'll still do that detail cleaning anyway later. But if you see any like foreign debris or anything stuck under there, like, I don't know, like grass or pieces of twig or whatever, especially like blown primers like to sneak down underneath there. If you have any of that down there, then stick around for the step on how to take this out, clean underneath it, then put it back together. The trigger I'm using here is a Geisley SSA EX lightning bow, but the process is going to be very similar for any mil-spec trigger or any two-piece type trigger. All right, and if you have a cassette style trigger, so it's like all one piece that drops in, I'm not going to cover how to remove and install that in this video, but we do have a lot of content out there on how to install those in guns, so you could just refer to one of those videos. It won't tell you how to clean it, but it'll tell you how to put it in and take it out. Alright, so really that's all you need to do with this. The buffer tube itself, it shouldn't get too filthy. It'll get a little bit dirty in there, but that's fine. You don't really need to do a lot with that. If you wanted to clean it, you could actually take a 12 gauge shotgun bore mop and run it in there dry and just kind of use that to clean everything up. I very rarely put anything in there to clean it because I use a dry lubricant. That's the whole reason I use a dry lube back there, is because like a standard wet lube gets all on the walls and stuff like that, and then stuff tends to cling to it. But with a dry lube, you really don't have that issue. So yeah, that's the whole point of using that. Okay, now I'm just going to set this aside for a second, and then we'll go ahead and clean that bolt carrier group. Okay, now if you're trying to put your selector back on, but you're like, man, this gun's stuck on fire, it won't go back on safe, you have to cock the hammer. AR-15 will only go to safe when the hammer's cocked. It's just the way the trigger mechanism's designed. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for now. We'll come back to it shortly. Now, we can start cleaning up this bolt carrier group. So it's been soaking in that KG carbon remover. So now I'm just going to scrub it. And for the outside of it, like this area here, the bottom of it, the back usually doesn't really get too dirty, but we'll wipe that down anyway. We just don't need to scrub it. Clean up around your gas tube, and don't forget to get that back area right there. All right, so now where the carbon buildup actually tends to cake up on these things is inside, especially at the very back. And it's obviously, it being a small diameter and pretty far back there, it can be quite a pain to clean. So to clean it, I'm just kind of cleaning up wiping down the outside of it here, so I can just kind of get that out the way. But to clean it, we have this bolt scraper tool, or bolt carrier scraping tool. This is a Brownells tool, and it's made specifically to go down in there and scrape that carbon. So what we're going to do is just simply insert it, and it has a long pilot on it, so it just goes straight in. And then you're just going to very lightly push forward as you turn clockwise. And if you don't feel it doing anything, that's a good sign. That means that it's probably already done working, or there wasn't very much back there anyway to begin with. So whatever, I mean, don't just like bear down on it, push as hard as you can and turn. You just want to apply light pressure and rotate clockwise. And if you look at the tool right here, it didn't feel like it was doing anything to me, but it was just cleaning that very efficiently, actually. It just scraped that carbon right up. Now that is the carbon that was caked on in there, and it took it right off. And to clean the tool, you literally just wipe it off. That's fine. Okay, looking in there, that looks pretty good. And there's still some left in there that didn't pull out with the tool. which is fine. I'm just going to use a Q-tip to this little cotton swab here, and just use that, and you can see that is absolutely filthy. So we're going to do that again until it is a lot less filthy. Man, that was pretty excessive. And there we go again. It's still very dirty. So what I'm actually going to do, just kind of help me along here. I'm going to take that Hoppe's number 9 with that acid brush and just go crazy. So just paint it on there. Don't worry about dripping Hoppe's all over this other stuff. That's perfectly fine. We're going to clean it anyway. Alright, and when you're painting Hoppe's on the inside here, just remember there's no mistakes, just happy little accidents anytime you're painting with this stuff. Okay. For those of you that got the reference, great. For those of you that didn't, then you need to fix your life, essentially. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. Again, this is another great opportunity for that air chuck to spray in there if you have that available. If not, then put your fingers to work and use the cotton swab. And also get your mind out the gutter. Okay, that's looking a lot better than it was. It's not perfect, but it's looking a lot better. And I would stop right there, but something inside just won't let me. So, OCD maybe? I don't think I have that. More likely some form of autism is really more likely what it is. But that's okay. Alright, yeah, that's looking pretty good. It's really that backside that's getting me. I just broke one. I was going so crazy. Okay, that I can work with. I say as I go for another. Okay, so something else you can do, or you should do, I should say, is also come in from the backside here and just kind of repeat that, do the same thing, because this area gets very dirty as well. I should have actually used the Hoppe's brush on this also because of that. And this is, it's a little bit larger, so we'll actually just use a cleaning patch and breach tool for that, because it is a lot dirtier than I expected it to be. Where is the breach? It's right in front of me. Alright. And I'm going to use that brush side again just to kind of push that patch in there. Haven't actually used the breach tool for this before. I might actually just use that solid side. Cool. Alright, yeah, and the reason that area gets so dirty is because that is where a lot of the, a lot of gas stuff is happening, right? So it comes down, it comes, you know, the gas goes down the barrel, up the gas block, down the gas tube, into the bolt carrier, down into the bolt carrier group, and is vented out of these holes here on the side. So all that gas is just, and the carbon buildup is just all up in there. Front side, back side, it gets everywhere. Obviously you saw how much was just in the receiver itself, so it's way more than that in the bolt carrier group. And that was a very abbreviated, this is how your AR-15 kind of cycles and works kind of thing. I've done stuff where I was way more detailed in the past. I'm not going to get too detailed on that in this video. That's not what it's about. It's really just about cleaning it. All you need to know is gas is all up in this area, so it gets dirty. And this is one of those areas. You'll still get a bunch of carbon and stuff like that in your receiver on a piston gun, just because of the stuff that's happening in the barrel as it's running and that stuff blowing back. But a direct impingement gun like this one, I know technically, you know, whatever, but these tend to be way dirtier than piston guns for that reason. So they require a little bit more maintenance on the actual bolt carrier. Like, for example, if I were to take my BRN4, which is a HK416 clone, shoot the same amount of ammo suppressed out of this gun right here, put them side by side, that bolt carrier would be a lot cleaner in the BRN4. And this is another good area for a bore mop as well. You could probably take like a 410 sized bore mop and stick it in there and clean a bunch of that stuff out. But that's it right there. And this little shelf always drives me crazy because I always almost forget it. But right underneath the gas key is this piece on top where your gas tube goes into. But getting that under there. Okay, cool. Right under there. This is the part where you say underwear, and then I make a childish joke and laugh at you. Alright, so that's it for the bolt carrier. What we can do at this point is I take the outside of it, especially on phosphate ones. If it's nitrided or chromed or whatever, I don't worry about it with that. But with the phosphate, I like to take an actual oil, not just a cleaner. If you use COP for the entire process, you probably don't need to do this. But I spray the outside and then wipe off the excess. Now, this isn't the lubricating step. I'm not lubricating yet. I am just rehydrating that metal. And that phosphate is really good at holding oil. So now it is like super corrosion resistant because that oil's just impregnated into there. And like a lot of it, especially like your nitride bolt carrier groups, right? That's a very slick surface and it's not porous, so you can't really, like, it's impregnable, if you will, for that reason with the oil. But I'm sure like Sir Braun of the Blackwater would have other things to say about that. Just as a Game of Thrones reference for absolutely no reason in the middle of this video. Okay, I have 3 cotton tip swabs left right now before I have to go get more. So we're just going to do what we can with them. Okay, now at this point, oh, also, I mentioned cleaning up in the back of there. If you actually take your bolt carrier group and look straight down it, you will notice there's a hole that goes all the way through, right? Just make sure you take a Q-tip. I was doing it while I was cleaning in there, but just run one right through that hole. Because that hole is where the tail of your bolt goes through. Speaking of bolt, let's clean the bolt. So we'll set our bolt carrier aside, and then we will take this very, very gross, dirty bolt. Now, the part of your bolt that gets the most carbon built up on it is this bevel right here. And if you look really closely, you can probably see it. It looks like a rough surface. That's carbon that's built up on there. And if you were in the military at all and you just remember having to try and scrape that as much as you can before the armor would let you turn this thing back into the arms room, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you who are new to this, that's an area right there that it's not really detrimental that you get it clean, but if you don't clean it every now and then, it'll just continue to cake up, and that will affect the function of your firearm. But a little bit on there isn't going to matter. This amount on there isn't going to matter, but I'm going to go ahead and remove it because I have a really cool tool that removes it easily. This is the Brownells bolt scraper. Similar to our bolt carrier scraper, this one, instead of doing the inside portion of something, it does the outside radius. So what we're going to do is take the tail of our bolt, slide it into the bolt scraper, and you can see the contour matches pretty much perfectly. And we're going to do the same thing now. We're just going to very slightly apply some pressure and rotate clockwise. And that's doing a pretty darn good job. I can see a lot of it getting on here actually. So let me just go a little further here. You can see the tool just like peeling it up. It's crazy. I would have killed for one of these when I was in the Army. Instead of that basic like GI cleaning kit, man, this thing is way more convenient. Okay. Again, we'll just clean this tool up by simply just wiping it off. And that looks much better. There's still a little bit on there. I'm actually going to go a little bit further with it. I mean, it took off 95% of it, which is honestly, that's plenty. This tool does an even better job whenever it's really caked on there. It just absolutely shreds it off of there. It's fun to watch. It's satisfying. But whenever you have just a little bit on there, yeah, you can see it taking it off there. All right, that is really good. I'm gonna leave that there. All right, my brush with the carbon remover on it, is that this one? It is not, it is another one. But that's okay, I'll just use this one. Take some more of the carbon remover. I should really label this. Now I'm gonna scrub all around those bolt lugs. So the carbon doesn't tend to, I mean, it gets all around the lugs, but it doesn't cake up like it does back here, where that hot gas is literally just pushing right on that area of the bolt. Also, you can get some caked up. I say you can, you will get some caked up on this front section as well. But it doesn't matter nearly as much because like I said, the tail of this bolt goes through your bolt carrier. So if it's caked up on there, it's going to be harder going through there. This gap right here doesn't do that, so it really doesn't matter as much. And for whatever reason, this radius right here that the tool doesn't touch tends to be easier to clean. So I always just do that by hand, and as you can see, it came out pretty well. Again, if you want to go even further, you can do some carbon scraping with your breach tool. Okay. Now, all you need to do at this point is, you can wipe out the area where your extractor sits. What I actually like to do as well is take let me kind of just put some down in there. This is a really good time to use pipe cleaners if you have them. Pipe cleaner goes right down in there and does a great job. Let me check and see if I actually have any in here so that you don't have to watch me struggle to clean it without. Alright, and I got them here. So pipe cleaner. These pipe cleaners have like extra nylon bristles in them, and they work really well for cleaning guns and pipes. So I also smoke a tobacco pipe, and these are great on that too. But I just take a pipe cleaner, run it in there. You can kind of see, now you see it sticking out of the firing pin hole right there. I don't really try to run a pipe cleaner through that tiny hole. That's not the way to do things, because you're gonna end up getting a pipe cleaner stuck. But just clean it like so. Flip it over and do the same thing. Okay, so now let's just kind of wipe off all that cleaning chemical. And I know someone, if you haven't posted it already, you're going to post it. You've already have it typed up. You just haven't hit send yet. but you're probably yelling at me for not wearing gloves. If you want to wear gloves, awesome, wear gloves. Obviously, it's too late for me now, okay? But if you want to do it, that's fine. I've come too far. It's too late. Okay, so now that I have all the cleaner off of it, what I can do now is take some rim oil, same exact thing, spray it. This time I'm actually going to spray a little bit in there. Wipe it down. Now this is a semi-detailed cleaning of a bolt. I'm going to show you the detailed cleaning of the bolt as well. There is one part we did not remove that whenever I do a detailed cleaning, I remove. And if you're wondering, when do I do a detailed cleaning? When do I do a basic cleaning? I'll address that at the end of the video, just to kind of keep it where people will actually see it rather than just drop it right in the middle of the video, that especially on a part that some people may be skipping. Just using the cotton swab here to really get up in there. All right, that looks really good. Okay, so now let me see what I want to use for this. I'm just going to take these dirty patches, flip them inside out, and push it through the cam pin hole, because that cam pin hole is pretty dirty on the inside there. Great. Beautiful. Okay. Now, I'm going to set that aside. The extractor, this thing, still need to get an insert for it. I'll do that later. That's no problem. And on your extractor itself, there's a ledge right there. That's what actually grabs onto the rim of the cartridge, that case, and pulls it out. Just clean inside of there to the best of your ability. You know, the small end on your brush works great. And extractors, you really don't have to replace these. If it's time to replace the extractor, it's probably time to replace the bolt, because they don't really ever break. So with that, what I will say though is that the spring may wear out, and the inserts in the spring may wear out, but not the extractor itself. Now, if you look at your extractor, and on this surface here you notice any cracks or chips or anything like that, then yeah, replace it. That's you have bigger issues there. So replace the extractor. They're not that expensive, and yeah, they're obviously very easy to take this one out and put a new one back in. And I mentioned there was an insert that goes in this spring. This spring, if you want to take the spring out, you literally just pull it out. It's just friction fit in there. But I'm going to go ahead and pull it out because I'm going to put that new insert in it. And I have no idea how the insert is not in there, if this one didn't come with an insert or what happened. But we're going to go ahead and replace it. I'll be right back with that new part. Alright, so I have the insert now, and the insert, let me just clear out a little area here so you can see. It is simply just that little black piece right there, and it goes inside of the spring and provides, I don't want to say extra, I'll say provides the correct amount of extractor tension. And when it's inside of that spring, then they both sit. I'm going to press this spring back into the extractor here. There we go. And that's what it's supposed to look like when it comes apart. So you have your spring, then you have your insert, and then you have the little donut piece here. And that just goes over the two. And they go just like that. Will it function without the donut or without the insert? Yeah, most of the time. But with these two extra components, it provides extra tension on there. especially when your gun starts getting dirty or if it's just overgassed in general, which most guns are. This tends to be the more reliable setup to go with. So I always recommend using all 3 components on your extractor. So with that, our extractor is now complete. All right, okay, I'm going to set that over there next to the bolt carrier, or excuse me, the bolt and carrier. Now we can do the firing pin. Firing pins are usually pretty easy. You don't even really need to scrub them. You just wipe them off. Now, the back of the firing pin is actually what creates some of the gas seal inside of the bolt. So this really dirty area right here, when the bolt is installed in the carrier, this actually pushes back against it and creates a seal from this gas here to here, so that it kind of just slows everything down a bit as far as that gas goes. So there tends to be a lot of carbon buildup right around here. And you can use a scraper like the one on your breech tool and just kind of scrape it off. It usually comes off pretty easy. Or again, if you have a stainless steel bristle brush, this is a really good spot to utilize that as well. And again, like everything else, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get the bulk of it. And that is good enough for what we're doing today. All right, it's still some on there, but I got the bulk of it off. And then your cam pin. So the cam pin usually doesn't cake up too much carbon either. So just wipe that off. I'm gonna wipe it off. And it has that carbon remover on it that I just wiped off most of. So I'm just gonna hit it with a little bit of ram oil, just so that there's a good preservative on there, if you will. And then the firing pin retaining pin. So this little cotter pin here. Same thing with that. Give it the same treatment. We'll set it down. And then our extractor pin, you won't believe this. You're not gonna believe this. But actually what you need to do with this is the exact same thing. Alright, now I mentioned, so that is the cleaning of the bolts carrier group. Now, if you want to do a detailed cleaning, obviously you can remove the extractor like we already did, but you can also remove the ejector. So we have a tool, Brownells makes a tool that makes removing and installing the ejector a lot easier. I don't have one of those with me here today, so I'm just gonna do it the regular way. Alright, so what we'll need is a punch, a 1/16 roll pin punch to be specific. So I will grab one here. That is not the right size. There it is. All right. And then we need a bench block. I'm just going to use a steel one for this. And then you're going to locate the pin. So the pin is this roll pin right here, visible from both sides. Can be driven in or out from either side, doesn't matter. And then I am just going to drive it right out. Now for this one you do need a hammer. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a polymer one, just because that one's sliding around a little bit too much there. Okay, so we got the pin out. Pin is sitting right there. Now, the only thing holding the ejector in, so your ejector is that pin right there, the only thing holding it in is this punch. So when you pull the punch out, the ejector is going to try to vacate the premises immediately. So we'll just want to put it down on something and then pull the pin out. And then the ejector and ejector spring will come right out. All right. And really, this area doesn't get too dirty. It just gets, I mean, it'll be a little, I mean, you're using oil and all this other stuff in there. There'll be plenty of dirty oil and stuff in there. But not usually anything that'll inhibit it from functioning. And I know a regular Q-tip will fit down there. Let's see if one of these, yeah, this one does too. Great. Not Q-tip, this is a pipe cleaner. And that's all you got to do. And then for the outside, you're not going to believe it, but all you got to do is wipe it down. So visually inspect it, look at it. Are there any cracks, chips, anything like that? If so, time to replace it. The ejector spring usually doesn't have to be replaced too often. And just inspect it for any cracks, chips, kinks, anything like that, and replace as needed. We'll talk about in the end of the video when to replace springs on your AR-15, but this is kind of one that you shouldn't really have to replace too often. Usually these last the lifetime of the bolt itself. That can change depending if you're shooting suppress, how hot of ammo you're shooting, different things like that. But if you start having ejection issues and you can't really narrow it down to anything else, then yeah, it does happen. They occasionally do go out, just not very often. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble it. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it when I do. This is just a lightweight Slip 2000 here, I believe, if I remember correctly. Drop it down in there. The ejector itself, if you notice, has a cutout in it for clearance of the pin. So we're just going to want to make sure that that is facing the inside of the bolt itself. So it'll look just like that. And what I'll actually do is before I try compressing it or anything, I'll just get my roll pin started. And you can use a roll pin starter punch for this. But rather than digging back in that bag, I'm just going to do it just like so. So I'm going to get it started. Alright, so now, again, verifying that the cut is facing the inside, I am going to push down and just kind of tap it in with the brass side of the hammer here. And you can see that it is grabbing now. So now I can just set it down and finish driving it in the rest of the way. So you want to go in just below flush. Just below flush, we'll put it just below flush on both sides. And that's as far as you want to go. Now to check and make sure it's actually functioning properly once you reinstall it, push down on it, make sure it springs in and out. And that's good, we did it. And that is the detailed, that's what separates the detailed cleaning from the quick field strip cleaning on the actual bolt carrier group. Alright, now let's go ahead and lubricate and reassemble this bolt carrier group. First thing I'm going to put back together is the extractor. And what I'm going to do is take the gun oil I want to use here. So in this needle oiler bottle here, I have Sons of Liberty Spec 76 oil. And that's what I put on pretty much everything AR-15 related as far as general lubrication goes. So I'm going to put just a little bit on the high friction surfaces here. And if you want to know a high friction surface, it is the part that's like shinier than everything else. And for this area, it's really just where the pin rides. And then a little bit on those parts that actually contact the bolt there. Then we're just going to lay the extractor in. And we don't need to worry about lubricating the pin because we lubricate where the pin goes. And we'll just press the pin in while pushing down on the extractor. And you want it to go all the way through, because if it's not in all the way, you're not going to be able to insert the bolt into the carrier. Okay, and you're probably already eyeballing the next high friction surface. So the main one for the bolts is going to be this ring right here. This is the main riding surface that contacts the inside of the carrier. And I usually do also just put a touch or two on the gas rings. Honestly, anything around that area where the gas is actually blowing everywhere, it's very high pressure and it's very hot. Anything you put on there is going to be blown right out the gun. So don't go, you don't need to waste a bunch of oil putting it there. I will put a little bit on the back right here though, where it rides inside the carrier. And it's important not to over lubricate it, because what we're about to do here, we're going to do the gas ring check, and I don't want to get like a false positive, if you will, whenever we do that check. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this bolt, insert it into the carrier all the way, and just kind of rotate and pull it a little bit, just to kind of spread some of that oil around. And now I want to make sure, because this is a right-handed ejecting gun, I want the extractor on the right-hand side, kind of close to like the 10:30, 11 o'clock position, if you will, with 12 o'clock being up. All right, so that's where you're going to want it. And then we're going to install our cam pin. And I'll show you why we wanted it there. So we'll put some lubrication on the cam pin here, because this is a very high friction piece. And you're going to insert that cam pin from the top of the carrier through the bolt. And if you have it in the correct position, pushed all the way back and towards that 10:30, 11 o'clock-ish, you'll be able to see the hole and drop the cam pin right in. Once you have the cam pin dropped in, you're going to want to rotate it 90 degrees, just like so. And then from here, you can actually take your firing pin, insert it into the back, and push it as far as it will go forward. With that, as far as it'll go forward, insert the retainer for it. And there you go. Now it's assembled. Now to do that gas ring check that I mentioned, what you actually do, pull your bolt forward, gently set it on the table, and if it doesn't collapse under its own weight, by collapse, I mean it'll fall forward like that. If it stays up and doesn't collapse, then your gas rings are good. You don't need to replace your gas rings. This is how you check to make sure your gas rings are good or not. All right. Now, as I mentioned, you don't want to do that when it's too dirty, and you don't want to over lubricate the thing, because for both of those you may get a false reading. This is how you check it. Actually, most manuals, I believe the military armor manual, if I remember correctly, it's been quite a minute here, they actually tell you to check it with just the bolts in the carrier. So you set it in just so that your gas rings engage, and then you set it on the table. I haven't found any circumstance where a worn out gas ring will fall forward on this, but not with the rest of that stuff in there. I've always got the exact same reading regardless of which position I had it in. So because of that, and I've checked a lot of these, because of that, I just go ahead and do it assembled, because it's like, why spend the extra time to do something that's going to give you the same exact reading. Okay, so that is that's our bolt carrier group. Also, something else you want to look out for, just another check you can do, or another check you should do, I should say. Look at the gas key and just inspect your gas key. So it should be a nice round beveled, and when I say beveled, I mean there's a slight bevel on the inside there. It should be nice and concentric, no dents, dings, or anything like that. Because if the front of this is damaged, chances are your gas tube's probably damaged too, and you're not going to get a proper gas seal. So you're going to leak out a lot of gas right here while your gun's functioning or working, and it can cause it to malfunction, or because it'd be under gas because not enough gas is getting where it needs to be. Okay, now the only part on the upper receiver we really haven't covered yet is the charging handle. Charging handle is very easy to clean. Charging handles come in different lots of size, shapes, manufacturers, features, all that stuff. All you need to do, wipe off all the carbon buildup. So you're going to wipe off the outside, and then you're going to want to do this inside channel right here too. You should never really have to do any scraping on your charging handle because nothing tends to get caked on here. Just wipe it down. And typically with the charging handle, I don't even use any like solvents or anything. I just wipe it with the whatever gun oil's on there and then just relubricate it. Something you do want to check though is just make sure the actual latch itself, the hook, make sure your hook is an actual hook. It's not broken or chipped in any way. Okay? And make sure that it springs back and forth. That's it. That's all you got to do. Charging handles are easy. Okay, and before we reassemble our upper receiver, I have another tool, a gauge if you will, because remember how I mentioned that gas tube, if it's damaged or anything like that, it can cause you to be under gas because you're going to be leaking gas. Now if it's worn out, like overly worn out, because the gas tube has like this little bell on the end that creates a seal between your gas key and the tube. And if that's worn out, you can leak gas. You actually see this quite a bit if, like, especially with your budget ARs, whether it be store-bought, like from a lower-end manufacturer, or if it's a home build. If the gas tube is misaligned, so you can actually have a gas block. So the gas block is the piece up here that's on the barrel, right? Your gas block needs to be perfectly at the 12 o'clock position. If it's clocked a little bit too far to the left or a little bit too far to the right, stand by. Okay, had to grab something here. This is our cutaway AR-15. This works way better at explaining things. Okay, so the gas block up here, if it's too far to the left or too far to the right, you know, the clock position, the gas tube is actually going to be coming into the receiver. And when it comes into the receiver, it's going to want to kind of kick to the left or kick to the right a little bit. So as your bolt's cycling, your gas key is slamming into that gas tube, and there's more friction on one side than the other. So that means one side's going to get worn out before the other. And that uneven wear will actually create a bad gas seal, and then your AR-15 will start having malfunctions as acting like it's undergassed, when really it's just your gas tube's completely worn out because it wasn't installed correctly. So with that, you can actually see the gas tube in this upper right here, and I'm gonna close the bolt on it here, and you can kind of see everything go together, right? So that's how it functions. Now, to check and make sure our gas tube is good, we have this gas tube gauge. This is one we offer here at Brownells. This is a MCB, and this one has a kind of like a go, no-go type setup on it. All you need to do is clean your gun, right? And then you take the gauge, slide it in the upper receiver, and I'm going to slide it onto the gas tube. And it should stop right about there. Okay, that's good. So put it in there, kind of rotate. You can feel for flat spots with it like this. Now, if it was bad and worn out, what would happen is it would go down further than this. So this is go. If it goes further than this, that's no go. That means you need to replace your gas tube. Okay? And that's all there is to it. So just take the tool, slide it on there, rotate it. Yeah, this one's good. Okay. Not everybody needs that tool, but if you have a lot of AR-15s or you're someone that does a lot of shooting, you know, whatever, or especially if you're an armor, it's worth having. Okay, now, I said that was the upper receiver. Let's finish lubricating and reinstalling the upper receiver. So for the charging handle, I just lubricate these tabs here, side, top, and bottom. I do the top right here, and where it's kind of wearing on the side right there, I'll hit that. And that's it. I know people that like just completely paint these things in oil. You don't need to do that. Alright, so forgot I was kind of making a more like beginner geared video here. Alright, so to reinstall the charging handle, you're going to push it into the upper receiver, upside down, just like this. Push downward and push forward, and it'll snap into place. So now it's riding in the rails. So if you try to lift it up, it won't come out. There's rails that they ride in there. Okay, so now you want to pull it out a bit, like just like so. Because what we're trying to do is leave enough room for the gas key to lay in it and then push in. So let's go ahead and lubricate our bolts carrier. Now what I'm going to do, these rails on the side, high friction surface, that gets oil. Other side, that gets oil. Bottom that rides against the hammer and cocks it, that gets oil. Top sides. Top sides. And that looks pretty good. I'm not going to worry about the back of the bolt carrier because I'm going to have a bunch of dry lube that is inside of the, where is it? Here. That's inside of a receiver extension, so that'll take care of like lubrication back there. So that's all you need to do on the carrier. Our charging handle is staged to receive the bolt carrier group. We lay it in, and then we push everything forward. Now make sure that your bolt is forward in the carrier. So when I say that, I mean not push back, because look, the cam pin's in the way. We're not going to be able to get our bolt carrier group in. Pull the bolt forward, and you'll be able to push everything in. So that cam pin being in the way, there's a cutout on the side of your receiver, and even better, I'll show you a cutout of the cutout where the cam pin actually engages. So if we pull back, cam pin moves. When everything's in battery, the cam pin is using that little bump out to sit. Okay, now the upper receiver, both like detailed clean and basic clean are complete. There it is. Now for the lower receiver, we did the basic cleaning, like that's done. Now we can do a detailed cleaning. All right. So with that, you can go more detailed than what we're going to do. So you can go so far as to remove the magazine catch and things like that. We're going to leave that in. The only thing we're really going to take out is that fire control group. Okay. So with that, what I like to do is put the hammer in the forward position, and then we remove the hammer first. So I'll use a bench block. I'll use a punch, and you can come out left to right or right to left. It really doesn't matter. but I'm not even going to use a hammer. I'm just going to push. So I pushed, the pin came out. Now I want to capture the hammer and pull my punch out, because the hammer was under spring tension. We're going to leave the spring on it. That's perfectly fine. And the trigger is going to be even easier to get out now, because the hammer legs, the spring legs, were actually holding the trigger pin in. And that comes right out. Hammer pin and trigger pin on all the modern guns anyway are the same, so you don't need to worry about getting those mixed up. We'll pull out the trigger. Now if you're using a mil-spec trigger, you'll probably be able to take it all out without taking out the safety. But on this Geisley trigger, this lightning bow, I completely forgot that you could not get this thing apart with the selector in. So we're going to go another step forward, because I'm sure that someone out there is using non-mil-spec triggers. So I'll just go ahead and do this for you and for me. Remove your grip cap if you have one. Then we just want to jump inside here. We're going to unscrew our grip. So look down in there, see what bit size you need. Spoiler alert, mine was not that size. I think it was the next size up, actually. So some of these are hex bits, some of these are slotted bits. Just use whichever one unscrews yours, because they can be different. So I'm just going to unscrew here. And the grip I have on mine is a Kung Fu grip from Die Free Company, or Defco. Alright, so when you pull the grip off, be careful, because there is a spring that goes inside of there. And then you also have a detent, which I'm actually going to put the spring back in the grip so I don't lose it. And the detent, I use grease whenever I assemble these for that detent, so it's being a little bit stubborn. So we're just going to leave it where it is right now. If your detent comes out and you have a standard selector, your selector will just fall right out, because that detent is the only thing holding your selector lever in, unless you have an ambidextrous one like I do. Now I have a roll pin holding mine in, so I need to get that roll pin out the way. And the detent fell out, as well as the roll pin. Perfect. And this is these levers are made by Forward Controls Design, and they are a very snug fit, very well machined on here, so they take a little bit of effort to get off. And let's see here. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this off real quick. Chances are you're a step ahead of me, because yours was not on this tight. And if you're curious about my receiver, this is actually a LMT Mars L receiver. And it has a bunch of ambidextrous controls on there, which is what makes it look a lot different than others. Alright. So your selector lever will come out, just like so, and then your trigger will come out. And this video, if we weren't doing the detailed strip version as well, would pretty much be over by now. But we are. So once you have your trigger out, you can clean underneath it and all around the sides of that receiver. And I just get in there with a rag and wipe it out. You shouldn't have to do any scraping or anything like that. As you can see, just wiping it out with the rag, I'm not even going to get any solvents down in there. It's as clean as it's going to get. So that looks pretty good. Next, you can take your trigger and just, again, give it a wipe down. Same thing with the hammer. As you can see, we are getting to a lot of stuff we couldn't get to in our field strip here. We're able to clean a lot more. But you don't have to do this every time you clean your gun. This is way more in-depth than what you need to do every time. Okay. Oh, I'm going to clean off that selector as well. So now it's time to reassemble everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the trigger. And I'm going to take my trigger, just lay it down in there. And I have my disconnector, which is this piece right here, just kind of floating on there. Now, what I need to make sure of whenever I put this trigger into the receiver and I push my pin to hold it in, I need to make sure my pin goes through the trigger, but also through the disconnector. There's a hole in the disconnector, so you got to line it up with the trigger and push the pin through. And what that looks like on a regular mil-spec receiver, it looks like that right there. Okay, so nothing too crazy. And also, this is a good indication that shows you how the hammer spring leg retains the trigger spring. It literally lays across that groove that's cut in it and keeps it in. Okay, jumping back into reassembly here. And actually, I like to use a little bit thicker grease on my my trigger bearing surfaces. So, those of you who have seen more than like 2 videos on this channel, you know I like to use words are hard today. Brownells Action Lube Plus. I use it on everything. So, I'm going to put that on my trigger contact surfaces. This is a 2-stage trigger, Geisley trigger, so those contact surfaces are a little bit different than your standard mil-spec trigger. But we are putting it everywhere. Okay. We even put it in some extra places, I think, just now. I was going crazy with it. Alright, lay the trigger in there. The trigger spring legs are going to kind of want to push up, so you're going to need to physically reach in there. I use my thumb and push down. Line up the hole in the side and push your pin through. Now, a lot of pins will just have 2 cuts in them rather than 3. So take advantage of that smooth side and push that through first. If your pin has 3 cuts in it, 1 in the middle and then 1 on each side, then it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I went through the trigger, through the disconnector, and you can function check it by just making sure the trigger comes back and springs back forward on its own. That's what you're looking for. And we'll go ahead and install the hammer before we put the selector and grip back on. Why not? Okay, so take your hammer legs, and with your hammer and spring and stuff, like this is correct, okay? This is not correct. So the spring needs to be behind the hammer, just like that. Alright? That's how you want it in there. So with the spring hooked in the back, we're going to take our spring legs, lay them over that trigger spring we just installed, and again, using our thumb, we're going to push forward on that hammer. I'm going to take my pin, we're going to line up the hole, and I'm just going to push it in. A vise and a vise block work great for this step. Obviously, I am not using that right now. So right now, I'm stuck on the retainer. I can feel it, so I'm just going to give it a slight tap. Get it past the retainer, now push it in the rest of the way. And I felt it click into the groove. Now our trigger is installed. Okay. Now let's reinstall our selector. And actually, I'm going to work this trigger a few times, just kind of spread that grease around between the trigger and the hammer. Alright, so cock your hammer, make sure it's cocked, then you can insert your selector, because if it's not cocked, you're probably not going to be able to get your selector in, but it'll go right in. Okay, now I'm going to reinstall my ambidextrous side. And the reason my levers are the way they are, for those of you wondering, this is set up for a left-handed shooter. So if they look a little wonky, that's why. And we're going to put the pin back in. That's back in. Take our detent, drop it back into the hole it once came from with the pointy end going in. All right, and then the grip and spring go right back on there. And then reinstall your screw. All you got to do is put this screw in, tighten it down. You don't need any Loctite or anything like that. If you didn't see me using Loctite on something, do not put Loctite there, all right? Loctite is a great way to mess something up that was very easily avoidable. Okay, tighten that down, and that's it. That's the lower receiver. And I'm about to, there we go, lose that bit. Okay, and our grip plug, don't forget that. Okay, awesome. Now, all we need to do is take our buffer spring, just wipe it down. Look for any cracks, missing chunks, kinks, anything like that. I'm going to talk about when to replace this spring shortly after we get everything together. I'm going to take it back apart and show you. Alright, so that's good. I'm going to take the buffer and again just wipe it down. You don't need to put any chemicals or anything on this stuff, just wipe it down. Okay, once you have these two components wiped down, slide your buffer back onto your spring, and now we can apply that dry lube I was talking about. So there's a few different things out there. Hornady makes one. Otis dry lube is what we're using here. They have some stuff called Mag Slick that works really great. Any dry lube really works fine. And I just hold it like so, and I spray it. And then wait like 5 seconds for it to dry. And then stuff it back into its home. All right, go to your home. Get in there. Okay, and that is it. I'm gonna take my takedown pins, open them up, take my upper receiver, place it onto my lower receiver, and everything is reassembled, lubricated, it's clean, and it has that clean gun smell. Okay, so function check is your last step. You want to put it on safe. Nothing happens. That's good. Put it on fire. Something happens. That's good too. Now, while holding the trigger back, pull your charging handle, let it go. Gently ride the trigger forward. You should feel the disconnector reset. You should feel it click. And that's good. Put it back on safe. And everything is good. So function check was great. Now, let's talk about when to replace your springs. We can go ahead and talk about when you should replace your barrel too, because barrel life is also a pretty big concern with a lot of people out there. And you'll be surprised what the actual answer is. Okay, so when it comes to the springs, especially your buffer spring, I don't like to give an exact round count as far as life goes, because that means absolutely nothing if you're shooting suppressed, if you're shooting a hotter round, whatever. Those numbers are going to change pretty drastically depending on how you're shooting your gun. So what I actually like to give is measurements. So minimum measurements, because as your buffer spring gets worn out, it'll actually get shorter. So what that actually looks like, I'll show you how to measure it here while I'm at it. Now this one may be a little different because this Geisley Super 42 spring, because it's kind of its own thing, but you'll get the gist of it. So like I said at the beginning of the video, this is an A5 length buffer system, so it actually uses a rifle spring, okay? So what you want to do is separate your spring from your buffer, regardless if you're using rifle, carbine, A5, whatever. Take your spring, okay? Now, and take a tape measure or any measuring device. I promise the measuring device you want to use isn't going to be long enough to measure this, so keep that in mind. You'll need something with numbers on it. Okay, now, whenever it comes to, like, let's say, a carbine spring, for example, a carbine spring, if it is shorter than 10.5 inches, so if you throw your tape measure on it, it measures just under 10.5 inches or right at 10.5 inches. Even if it's right at 10.5 inches, it's worn out. It's time to replace that spring. Chances are your gun's already having issues before you got to this point, but that's your minimum measurement. Now, for a rifle length spring, which is the same as an A5, right? So A5 and rifle are the same as far as spring wear out goes. We're looking at 13.5 inches is where we're pretty close at. So I'd actually say probably about 13 inches is where we start looking bad, because this one, this spring's brand new. It's a Geisley Super 42 spring, like I said. It measures 13 3/4. So I'd say probably like 13 1/4 to 13.5 is worn out, okay? So if you have a rifle length spring, let's call it 13 1/4. If you have a carbine length spring, let's call it, what I say earlier, 10.5, okay? Those are your minimum measurements. Replace your spring if it's shorter than that. Now, let's talk about things like extractor spring. Extractor spring, typically most of the time that lasts a while. So I recommend every 3,000 to 5,000 rounds, go ahead and change those springs. Or obviously if you start having issues, you do a tension check and it feels looser than it should, go ahead and change those springs. Now when you change the spring, go ahead and change this extractor spring insert and that little donut that's around it as well. Change all that stuff. Change them all at once. Keep the extractor. Your extractor's probably fine. Just change the guts. Okay. Trigger spring and hammer spring. So the tricky thing about those is that they typically last almost forever. Not literally, but they last a really long time. Well past 3,000 to 5,000 rounds in most cases, because whenever they're being used, they never really go to their full compression. They only go to about half of that, especially your trigger spring. It barely moves at all. So they last a lot longer because they're not being cycled fully, if that makes sense. So those you really don't need to worry about unless obviously you start having issues. Or if you inspect it, you notice cracks, chips, whatever. Same can be said about pretty much any other spring in the AR-15. Your bolt catch spring, mag catch spring, those are really good examples of springs that last a really long time. Okay, so that's the spring stuff. Let's talk about barrel life. So whenever we talk about barrel life, it gets a little tricky, especially now that almost everybody has an FRT and they're shooting their guns really, really fast and getting them really, really hot, okay? All right, so your three main barrel types is just regular stainless steel. You have your nitride-coated barrels, and then you have your chromed line barrels. Out of all of those barrel types, chrome line is going to last the longest, and chrome line is going to hold up the best heat. So regardless if you're getting it super hot or not, like doing rapid fire stuff, you can expect close to 20,000 rounds of barrel life. Now, the quality of your barrel manufacturer and stuff like that are going to play into it greatly, but roughly like 20K, and that's a lot. So chrome line barrels will last almost forever. Now let's talk about nitride. So nitride barrels, not so much. If you run them cold, if you're not doing a lot of rapid fire and stuff like that, you can expect about 10,000 rounds roughly. Again, that varies between manufacturer and all that other stuff. But if you run a nitrided barrel like almost exclusively in rapid fire or full auto, you can expect probably half of that, because that nitride coating doesn't hold up nearly as well as chrome does under heat. And then stainless steel barrels. Stainless steel barrels, regardless of how you're running them, you can expect less than 10,000 rounds. Those are going to be the least durable, but in a lot of cases, they're kind of regarded as the most accurate because you can make them more consistently because you're not putting any type of coating or surface treatment on them. But they don't last as long, so there's that. So take that into account. You don't have to count your rounds. Just if your group size starts to open up and you cleaned your gun and it didn't help, then it's time to get a new barrel. If your barrel's still new, then there's something else going on there, and look into other things. But if it's an old barrel, then it may be time to kind of put it to rest. Okay, so that's the video. That was a super long video. It was way longer than I expected it to be. I just, kind of got started and things escalated and snowballed from there. But I hope you got a lot out of it. I'll, of course, make everything in chapters so that you can jump around to where you need to without sitting down and watching the whole thing. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to post them down below. If you need help, especially in like the reassembly process or anything like that, or just need help with anything for any reason ever, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.